This is Mike Baglietto. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Airtight Networks, and with me today is Dr. Hemant Chaskar. He's the Director of Technology at Airtight. And today we wanted to talk about wireless security as it pertains to the enterprise and why IT is continually frustrated with the tools they have to manage their wireless network security. What are the biggest frustrations that you see in talking to customers about their frustrations managing their wireless security?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Mike. If we have to talk about the sources of this frustration, I would say the first source is the amount of configuration that you have to do on many of these systems to get them operational. And on top of that, you have to manage those configurations on a continuous basis. Now, if you look at the way wireless networks and security works, there is no exact science behind how to set these parameters. So you really are kind of clueless as to what are the right parameters for me, and then it results in frustration when you work with the system.
So there's not a given signature for every single threat, is what you're saying?
That is exactly correct, because some threats can have multiple signatures, some threats may not have any signature, and some attacks, what we call as zero-day attacks, we even don't know what they are, right? So how am I going to set thresholds and signatures for zero-day attack? So it's a very difficult problem, and that results in frustration in the end. Another source I have often seen for this frustration is the volume of alarms that some of these systems generate. Okay, alarms is a good thing when you are working with a small setup, but when you scale up your network, if you have to deal with so many alarms on a day-to-day basis, it's basically stress resulting into lapses, finally resulting into frustration. And as a matter of fact, if you look around, right, it's like an arms race between some of these systems that who has the biggest number of alerts.
It's funny, it seems that that's how a lot of tools are actually evaluated, which is the number of signatures and the number of alarms they can throw, not necessarily how they protect you.
Exactly, and more alarms equal to more protection is a fundamentally flawed proposition, right? When you scale it up, more alarms means more frustration, not protection.
So how do they avoid that frustration? You and I talked about the building blocks of wireless threats, and describe your concept of building blocks and what that actually means in terms of addressing the problem.
That's a very important concept, I think, and that's basically your solution to avoid frustration. Okay, so what I would like to say here is there is a distinction between two approaches the way wireless security works. One approach, what I call is intrusion prevention approach, and another I call as intrusion detection approach. Okay, now if you go out today in the market, everyone says that they have intrusion prevention, but if you look at that very carefully, then you will realize that that's not the case, and I will explain that to you, right? So let us understand something very fundamental about wireless security. This whole wireless security, right, it actually rests on some fundamental vulnerability building blocks. Okay, to cite some examples, there are rogue APs, there are misconfigurations, there are client misassociations, spoofing. So there are these few building blocks on which all your threats and vulnerabilities ride. Okay, now the intrusion prevention approach, which by the way Airtight Networks pioneered, it focuses on these building block vulnerabilities and tries to detect them accurately and contain them automatically without manual intervention. Now once you have that detection and containment in place, no attack or no exploit can find a way into your enterprise network, and then you get the solid security, right, without all the overhead of alarms, configurations and manual intervention. But when you look at intrusion detection approach, the approach is very different. It's not about focusing on detecting and containing these vulnerabilities. It is about chasing each separate signature and symptom of attack, many of which eventually would turn out to be false alarms, just the normal activity or an activity in the neighborhood, right? Or it could also result in missed activity because you did not have signature for that. Now when you are adopting that kind of approach to wireless security, which I call as a detection approach, that creates all the problems for configuration, false alarms, manual intervention, right? So I think the wisdom is in choosing the right system which can give you true wireless intrusion prevention approach.
So what is that critical difference from a technology point of view between the intrusion detection approach, which is basically alert me to anything,
Correct.
and I'll make the decision what's a threat?
Not only that, I will tell you what to alert me on. So
Exactly.
I work for the system, not the system work
Works
for me.
That's a good way. So what's the underlying technology that makes it possible to actually turn that model around and actually have the system handle more of that intelligence and actually prevent those security incidents from happening while eliminating all that frustration?
Correct. So basically what you need to be able to do is accurately detect the building block vulnerabilities, and a key technology enabler that comes in there is accurate auto classification, which means automatically classifying all the wireless activity into threats, neighbors, or authorized, right? And that too without any configuration, without any manual intervention.
So and really there's only those three
exactly.
classifications.
Yeah.
It's either it belongs to me, it doesn't belong to me, and it's a threat, or it doesn't belong to me and it's just happens to be in the adjacent airspace.
Exactly.
Other than that, there's really, those are the, can't get any more simple than that, right?
Yeah, and if you can arrive at that level of simplicity, that's the key to avoid all the frustration. And to arrive at that, right, you will need the system which has that technological sophistication, the product maturity to actually give that simple workflow. So classification is the key enabler. Another key enabler is how well you are able to contain those vulnerabilities, and that too automatically, right? You don't want to act, you don't want a human to act on each of these things and try to contain them. So accurate and reliable containment, which basically then you can be assured that that vulnerability will not be exploited in my network to launch whatever attack you are talking about, right? There is also an important piece of correlating some of the information and presenting it in a more concise form which the user can actually understand. It's actionable. It's not just an alert which I don't know what to do about, right? There are some funny alerts you will find, like a van around, a Sears van around. So what am I going to do? I want to call a cop? So
I
it's not
actionable. A couple competing products.
Yeah.
This service delivery van alert is just classic example of a signature-based approach to explain something in the environment that cannot be automatically classified by the existing wireless IDS system.
And it's not in my control. I mean, I cannot stop Sears van coming into my neighborhood, right? So every time it comes, it's going to raise an alert. And you will find many things like that. You and me just discussed that there is only three categories, right? There's a rogue, which means something bad. There's neighbors. Okay, I know it is there, but it's not harmful. Something is mine. Now you will see things like rogue AP by MAC address, rogue AP by RSSI, signal strength, rogue AP by SSID, rogue AP by vendor name. There is only one rogue AP in the world, right? So if you blow up the alerts like that, then it's real difficult for the administrator to understand what is happening.
The different permutations of all the different rogue access point signatures it's real obvious to see that it becomes unwieldy very quickly.
Exactly. So what you just want to see is a rogue AP is detected and contained. Only one thing. And that concise kind of information delivery presentation is another key enabler. And I'm proud that over several of these last years at Airtight, we have invested a lot amount of resources into innovations, into providing better workflows to our customers, better presentation of this information, exactly to avoid this frustration. And that's I'm really proud about that we have done.